stars are in light, though we would know.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Improving Sales Performance livecast. I am so excited about today's show. We have an amazing guest. Arnie Malham is here, and he is. I'll do his bio in a second, but he is the founder of the Better Book Club, and that's BetterBookClub.com. You can go check it out after the show, not right this second, after the show, maybe both. People can multitask. That's right. And he's also the author of a great book called Worth Doing Wrong, and he's holding it up there, and you can look at his shirt. I love the way you spell wrong, which is fantastic. If you are watching live, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, if you leave a comment or you have a question, there's every chance that we're going to be able to see it. It normally works just perfectly. So just for practice, why don't you go ahead and leave a comment right now? Let us know where are you watching from today? What city or state? And if you want to do what most people do and tell us what the weather is where you are, that's always fun to see. I'm in Prosper, Texas, a suburb of Dallas. And it's really nice. It's quite beautiful here today. After a major town-shaking storm rolled through last night, it's kind of nice to have a beautiful day. And Arnie, I think you're in Nashville, right?
Nashville, Tennessee. We have rainy skies, but beautiful fall week otherwise. And that's the weather from Nashville, Matt. Back to you.
There you go, right? Okay, this is the Improving Sales Performance livecast. We have guests on as often as possible where we want to talk about sales leadership. We want to talk about culture. We want to talk about things we can do to improve sales performance, things that we can do in our organizations that are going to help us to grow revenue for the organizations that we work for, that we support. So with that in mind, let me introduce Arnie. Let me read a portion of his bio just to get the conversation started. So Arnie is an award-winning CEO, an 8-figure entrepreneur, best-selling author who helps progressive leaders create and sustain engaging cultures within their organization. So going on a little bit in his bio, there's a part in here that I think is just fantastic. And I think as leaders, we can probably all relate to this. Without a clue how to run a company, Arnie repeatedly got it wrong when it came to hiring, firing, and everything else related to building a business. He then stumbled upon a bold culture-first approach that gave his fledgling company the momentum it needed to become a success. And boy, did it become a success. By putting culture first, CJ Advertising grew to become the largest full-service brand building agency in the country exclusively for law firms. He later sold that company and turned his attention towards a new concept that played a significant role in creating the successful culture that he used to grow his company. And that's the BetterBookClub.com. And we're going to hear all about the Better Book Club. And full disclosure, the Center for Sales Strategy, we use the BetterBookClub.com platform for our book club, and it's a big part of our culture. So we love your company so much that we're a customer.
I love it. Matt, you read that bio with such purpose and such design. It's one of the best bios I've ever heard read about me, right? Which is always good to hear, by the way.
I'm available to read your bio every morning if you'd like.
You don't just do the weather. You don't just do the weather. You also are a professional bio reader.
All right, so let's jump in. Let's start with your work history, because I think a lot of people that will be watching this either live or in the future are going to be interested in that, just because a lot of the people that watch this live cast are from the media industry. Turns out you started off in media sales, right?
That's right.
Tell us, where were you? What did you do?
WTVF, the CBS affiliate here in Nashville from 1990 to 1994. The early 90s. This, probably way before some of your viewers were even around. In the early days, what I consider the early days of broadcast TV sales, was brought on and knew nothing. My sales training was go sell, and I spent 4 years doing my very best to do just that.
Absolutely. So you start off in TV sales there in Nashville.
Yeah.
And after were you a good salesperson?
I became a good salesperson, right? I started as, a bratty, thought I knew something kid out of college, and was basically said, here's the phone book, back when there were phone books, go sell. And so, two things made me successful in the media industry in that time. One was I was willing to walk into any business and talk to the owner. Obviously, I wasn't walking into massive businesses where you couldn't get access, but if I saw a business that I thought big enough to be on TV, that I also could get access to the owner, that's who I targeted, mostly because other people were scared to do it. Right. And I learned most of my skills, by doing, but first by reading. So I read a lot of Harvey Mackay. When they told me to go sell and I didn't know, I started reading the sales experiences of other people. I learned sales techniques. I learned how to have courage in sales. I learned what no meant. And it was the books I read that I could go experiment with to see what changed, what turned the dial into success.
You and I got started around the same time. And I remember back then reading the Harvey Mackay Swim with the Sharks.
Yeah.
Tom Hopkins.
Yeah, right? Tom was fantastic. Right. No one talks about Tom anymore. Fantastic. No. Yeah.
Right. But he was fantastic. I think I even went to a boot camp when he came to town. I went to one of his boot camps. Yeah. And then Brian Tracy was another one of those.
Yeah.
Right. Those were kind of the people back then that you read. That's how you learned. All right. So then after TV, you got out of TV. What did you do? You started an ad agency, a call center.
Right,
How'd that happen?
Well, one of the areas I had success at the station was with a unique up and coming sector, which was personal injury lawyers. I know people get all so excited about personal injury lawyers. I got excited about it, but for three reasons. They didn't seem to have good representation in the market. They were new. They weren't looked upon well, and so many prominent agencies sort of shunned the business. They had no idea what they were doing because they were swimming in virgin waters. And the truth was, TV at that time, and even now, that it's persevered, could do a massive job of helping them. And so other salespeople even shied away. So I ended up handling like 4 personal injury lawyers in my years at the CBS affiliate. And I had the opportunity not just to learn how to get them on TV, but the opportunity to learn how their business worked. And once I learned how their business worked, the opportunity zone started opening up for how I could help them be successful. That the agency, CJ Advertising, that became the largest full service agency, exclusively serving lawyers, right, was because of that experience. And that's where we began, is in that niche, helping personal injury brands become successful.
And so one of the things that I've heard you talk about on other podcasts like this, and I certainly know it's important to you, is you credit the success of CJ. One of the things that you did right was the culture first approach.
Right.
What is
Right.
that culture first approach? Give us the highlights of that.
Well, let me back up and tell you that for about 10, CJ was a 20-year experiment of success that ended up in success. But for the first 10 years, it was hard to call it a success. We survived, and we survived mostly because I wasn't putting culture first. We only survived out of just pure pushing the sled uphill. That I ended up creating a place that I didn't even like working at, and it wasn't until a moment in time, someone you're probably familiar with, John DeJulius, customer service expert from Cleveland, several books, super awesome person, was speaking to our client base, and in his description of how to create a customer service environment, he said the words, "Culture reflects leadership." And it was in that moment, literally 10 years into my journey, that I realized that I didn't like my culture, and the person responsible for it was me, which culture reflects leadership, and I was the leader. And it was at that moment that we began the journey towards a culture that grew us exponentially, that grew our clients exponentially, and put so many people that worked with us on a great path to success.
All right, so 10 years in, and I think I know everyone looks at businesses and they look at, and it looks like it went like this, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyone that's ever run a business knows that it's like,
all
and they
over the place.
hopefully end up here.
That's right.
All right. And so that's your story as well. When you started putting culture first,
Right.
what were some of those things that you did?
Right. So it wasn't, and so this is for anyone out there going, we need to change. Yes, you need to change. Chances are you need to change, but it's one thing at a time. As Susan Scott says in her book, it's gradually, and then all of a sudden. It's rarely all of a sudden. So it's one thing at a time. We found that every culture program we thought of and created and put in place, each one needed time, and it's not 9 hours or 9 days or 9 weeks. It's typically programs take 9 months, and most of your team, I've seen in other companies too, they just wait for culture programs to go away. We as leaders go to a conference or we read a book and we have an idea, and it's the new idea of the week, and we've trained many of our teams just to wait for it to go away. And so we have to go into the mindset of every program needs a champion, someone other than ourselves that's going to run the program. It's going to need a checklist, a list of things that can continue to happen on a sustainable, scalable basis, and quite frankly, permission to fail, permission and time to be successful or fail. And usually we found about 9 months. It takes 9 months for a program to start to create roots in your organization. And so that's what we did. We did one program at a time. And over the years, we ended up with this tourable, named, unbelievable culture that I'll write about in the book. But we got a lot of it wrong on our way to getting it right, and thus the title, Worth Doing Wrong.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You need to give yourself permission to do some things wrong and say, we tried it. Okay, we gotta move this way instead of that way. Who cares? It's fine.
And Matt, as leaders, we often give ourselves permission, but we rarely or sometimes don't give our team permission, right?
Yeah.
And we learn by getting stuff wrong. Our teams learn by getting stuff wrong. We as leaders have to give them permission to get it wrong, which is probably the biggest lesson in leadership that any of us ever learned, and it's probably the one lesson in leadership that changed our business the most.
Yeah, and I think that you're exactly right that what people in business do when leaders come back from conferences, they bring all these ideas.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the people in the office when the leader's not around, what they say is, don't worry about this. Give it 30 days, 60 days max. We'll be right back to the way we were doing things.
The number one way I know a project is going to fail is when the leader says, I'm going to take that on. I like this so much, I'm going to do it myself. It's front and center, and then it's the side of the desk, and then it's off the desk in 30 days. It's just how it is. We have to identify and support champions in our organization to run culture programs. And that's not one champion for all of them. It's one champion per program that we have found to drive the most success in organizations.
Love that. All right. So then you sell the businesses. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a nice
Only
feeling.
took 20 years. It was so short. Went by in a blink of an eye.
And then you turn your attention to this concept, this idea, the Better Book Club.
Yeah,
Tell us what that is for people. Pretend like I don't know anything about this. What is Better Book Club?
So up there in the top 5 lessons I had to learn as an entrepreneur, which is if you can't grow your people, you can't grow your business. You just can't. You can only push the sled so hard. And so Better Book Club became our way of growing our people. The books we read and the people we meet are the differences in our lives as we move forward in life. And I loved reading. I got so much. We talked about the sales books that taught me that began to teach me how to sell. And every time I read a book, I become richer and more knowledgeable, not necessarily for the information or the facts of the book, but how I think when I'm reading the book. And I so wanted that for our team, but I would tell them, this will sound familiar, I would read a book, I would tell our team to read it, and that's the last thing they wanted to do. I had to learn my last book was not their next book, that their next book is their next book. And my job wasn't to tell our people what to read. My job was to recognize and reward them when they did. It's not the book, it's the habit I'm trying to create. And Better Book Club helped us, and now helps hundreds of organizations create that habit in their people. We're not actually a book club. We're a platform that recognizes and rewards our team members when they read.
Yeah, I'm glad you just made that distinction, because I'll admit, when I first heard the name, I thought, oh, it's a book club. What do they tell you every month? This is the book everyone's going to read, and then everyone comments on it.
Yeah.
And then I did my due diligence. I'm like, no, this is different. This is a platform that encourages learning. It encourages people to. So tell us how it works. So somebody reads a book. What do they do then?
So the first step is that I want to know what the team has already read. So we have a process where you go tag all the books that you've already read, your bookshelf. What does Matt Sunshine's bookshelf look like? Is it 10 books? Is it 200 books? Which ones did you like? How would you rate them? And so you just sort of build your bookshelf. Then when you can see your entire organization's bookshelf, Matt, you know what the top books are, you know your top readers are. Everyone has targets. The people who report to you can see what you're reading or have read. You don't have to go tell them. They can just go look. And they can read what you've read, or they can read the opposite, but it's their decision. And then when they read a new book, not something they've read in the past, and they read a new book, they complete a simple report that I'd call more of a review. You or a team, not you, your champion approves that report, and they're awarded points. Then we convert those points to a reward, which is typically dollars, gift cards, things like that. And the team member goes, awesome, I read a book, I learned a lot in the book, and I got paid. Maybe I'll do this again. And by the way, here's the bonus. I didn't get told what to read, and I didn't have to go listen to someone else tell me what they thought of the book. I got to have my own opinion.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And one of the things that I like about it is those that book report, which is 5 questions. Right. They're really, I mean, you can customize the questions, but the questions that you all put up there are good. Like, how are you going to use this, or what's something you don't agree with in this book? Which, by the way, I think having that conversation, because you don't need to agree with everything that you read. Sometimes it's really refreshing to read something and go, I don't think that's really the way it should work in our situation. I love seeing those connections made. I'll tell you what we do. We added on to this. So at our company, for every book you read, it has points associated with it. For every point that you earn a dollar, up to $100 per quarter. So someone just for reading a few books can earn $100 a quarter, $400 a year.
Right.
But then what we ask everyone to do is to attend a quarterly book club meeting. We do it virtually. It's about an hour long. And we ask each person to present, this is the book that I read, and here's how I responded to the 5 questions that were asked, so that you don't really have to prepare anything. It's just, hey, I read this book. Here's how I responded. So sometimes when you don't know what it is to read right now, it's a nice way. Plus, it gets everyone talking about what we're doing. We reinforce it. Arnie, I can't thank you enough for creating the Better Book Club. I absolutely love it. But I do want to get on to another question. So you wrote a book, Worth Doing Wrong. Why'd you write it? Who's it for? What's it about?
So the culture, we didn't realize that what we were doing in the time. Sometimes you can't see the destination when you're on the journey. But what we ended up creating was a named, tourable, sustainable, and scalable culture within CJ Advertising. Now, the reason we created it wasn't because I'm just had to go do that. Is as the world is today, we were in a war for talent in an industry where talent didn't just come a running, right? Ooh, I want to help personal injury lawyers build their brands. Like, we didn't have that. And so we had to attract and retain talent in a very tough environment over the years. And so we started creating a culture that did that recognized people, that helped them grow, that gave them a reason to be a remarkable culture, something they could remark about to their families and friends, so that they stuck. And so that's what we created. And all of a sudden it was tourable, it was sustainable, it was scalable. We were literally doing, 3 and 4 tours a month here in Nashville as people came to town. I wrote the book so that we could expose that to more people. I developed everything within our culture through incredible R&D, rip off and duplicate technology, which I even steal that joke from Cameron Herold, who was the first person I heard it from. And so I'm just letting people rip off and duplicate from us. In the book are the programs we use to reward people, to recognize people, to grow our people, and we talk about what we did wrong, what the idea was, what we did wrong, how we made it right, and how we made it sustainable. And not many things bring me as much joy as when I see another company R&D rip off and duplicate something we did from the book.
That is a very nice thing to have happen. All right. So let's talk about the importance of culture and culture building and how it has changed as we are moving to more of a hybrid or a work from home environment. Yeah. What is your take on all that?
Well, it on a blink, someone might look at the book and go, yeah, you got a lot of stuff in here, but you did all this stuff in person. Well, we happen to be in person, but there's nothing here that can't, with a little thought, little creativity, be adjusted to a at work from home or virtual environment. We just got to think about it a little bit. We just have to do it with purpose. We just have to come up, get a team, get more brains around the idea and say, how do we execute this recognition program, this birthday program, this reading program, whatever you fill in the blank, virtually or in this new world where we're sort of half in person and half virtual. So lots have changed. You tell me the problem and we'll brainstorm a way to get around it. But you can do the same with your team. You just gotta be purposeful in creating the opportunity.
Yeah. And going back to one of the things that you said earlier, I think you need to be okay with not getting it right? I mean, you need to be okay with trying something and it not working and saying, that's all right. I mean, let's adjust it. Let's make it better.
The number one thing I can tell you to get this going is name your culture. Our culture was called camel culture. We can get into the reasons why, but more important, it doesn't matter what the name is. If your culture has a name, then you'll start putting programs inside that name. Oh, that's part of camel culture. We actually had an outline of a camel, and everything that was part of our culture was spelt out in there, like the name of the different programs, so that they stayed alive. They don't become things you thought you did or you did once upon a time or that you want to do. There are things that you're actually doing. Name your culture, put the programs that define your culture inside that sort of profile. Give every program a champion, give it a checklist, give it time to be successful or fail. This is the path towards a culture by design as opposed to one by default.
So can you give us a quick Reader's Digest version of how you came up with camel culture and what does it mean?
Well, let's just say I'm of Arabic descent. I grew up in Arkansas in a very, very small town where I didn't even realize I was the semi-brown kid in a otherwise segregated neighborhood. But camels, which don't exist in Lebanon, but most people don't think of that when they look at me. So.
I love it. In the book, do you talk about naming your culture? Is that
one of the big deals is, we need things. Everything needs a brand. like you're what you think of when we see the golden arches of the Nike Swish or the you fill in the blank is that brand. Your culture needs a brand, something for your people to get their arms around and remark about, so that it stays alive. And so it's hard for people to do. It doesn't have to be catchy. It just has to be a thing.
Got it. All right, Arnie, I cannot thank you enough for being our guest on the Improving Sales Performance Livecast. Those of you that are watching, if you want to get a hold of Arnie, there's a couple of ways you can do that. First of all, go to LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn. We got it up there, and connect with them. I know that he loves the connections. You want to ask him a question, feel free to message him that way. Also, you can go to worthdoingwrong.com. And if you want more information on the book, you can also go to BetterBookClub.com if you want more information on Better Book Club. And I'm a big fan and I highly endorse it. And if anyone has any questions or wants to know how we're using it at the Center for Sales Strategy, feel free to reach out to me. We've been using it now for a couple of years and I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the more important things that we do internally. If you like the Improve Sales Performance Livecast, do us a favor, go to YouTube, like, subscribe, share, do all of those things that we're trying to do, because we really do appreciate it and it really does help. And Deb Fulgham commented, and Arnie, you and I were talking about Deb before we got started. She said, fantastic book and enjoyed it. And I think Deb, Arnie's going to be reaching out to you about some new improvements that they've made to Better Book Club that he wants to make sure you're aware of. Arnie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Everyone else, have a great week. It was great spending time with you.
And when stars are in light,